Hey, it's 7:30, Thursday, June 21st, 2023. And I'm calling the regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Clawson. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Nick, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Carpenter.
Here.
Mr. Hildebrand. Mr. Erland. Ms. Perkins.
Here.
Ms. Cindy Smith.
Here.
And Ms. Diane Smith.
Here. Okay, thank you. So in your packet, you should have received the minutes from the May 18th, 2023 meeting. I'll hear a motion for approval.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes from May 18th, 2023 as published.
A second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Nick, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Perkins.
Yes.
Ms. Cindy Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Diane Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing on a variance from the requirements of section 5.1.B.1.A for 568 Parkland Boulevard to permit a parking space within the required front yard of the single family home. Is there somebody here to speak to this matter?
Yes.
Okay, if you just approach the podium and state your name and your address, please.
Joe Cuter and Joshua Cuter, we are co-owners of the home. And obviously, there's a need for a second accessible entrance to the home. With that, we'd like to have the ability to have a parking pad put in the front of the home, to have the accessible van, have clearance to unload and offload Josh in his normal transportation needs. And with that, put in a walkway that then would access a second entrance, safety entrance to the home. That's on the side of the home. We've built an aluminum ramp that leads up to the front porch. We're seeking approval to do that.
Okay.
And I think there's a few neighbors here that have come to make statements.
Okay. Well, I'll open up a public hearing at a later time.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the board?
I had a quick question. As I'm reading through the summary of the request, it's referred to as a parking pad in quotation marks. From the depictions provided, it doesn't appear that a car intends to be parked there. It does. Okay.
It's fully, the dimensions of that will allow the van to be there, and will align the deployment of the ramp to a walkway that goes in front of the home. I think it was depicted in there. And it'll go the full length of the house. And I put a shot of around the corner is where the ramp is already built. And then that gives a entry point to the porch that overhangs the front of the home. And ADA compliances recommends one or more accessible entrances to a home. So this is providing the secure, safe second entrance.
And then the driveway would then allow for 2 cars parked side by side.
Yeah, you have the straight driveway in. Yep.
Yeah, the driveway is currently a single car driveway,
Yes.
and that section would then just, that addition would give a
Bump
second car for
Okay,
that part.
thank you. Appreciate that.
So the only thing that I would like to make sure, and it's been brought to our attention in the packet, is that whatever vehicle you park there does not block the sidewalk at any time.
Correct.
That's just gonna be a contingent that I would really like to see.
Fully understand that and will comply.
And it doesn't look like it would necessarily anyway, because you have that little dip that, right? Okay,
Yep.
it was brought to our attention, so I wanted to make a note.
Yeah, currently I have to, currently part of the, just hand me the mic. Currently part of the onload offload process is me backing the car up to the sidewalk and, doing a temporary obstruction. So that would help solve that as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I assume you have a person involved to do the work
Yes.
and they plan on doing it before snow falls, I would assume.
There,
Yeah, yes, we do have somebody on standby hired to start once we get the approval.
Okay, great, thank you.
So Cindy, I think your question also answered that question, the second part of that question that Giffords wanted us to pay attention to is that wasn't gonna be permanent storage parking right in the front there.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I misread it thinking it was just gonna be a thing used to allow for the wheelchair onboard and off-board access. But you've explained that it's an actual car parking pad.
So, excuse me, are you gonna utilize the existing approach, or are you just gonna swoop in essentially? Or are you gonna add to the approach?
so if you look at the design,
I don't
it
have-
keeps the current approach, veers off to the edge of the current porch.
Okay.
So there's an angle in the description. And it shows, if you need to, I can pull it up.
Yeah.
The porch itself will stay current, same dimensions. And then it's adding a walkway in the front of the house that will extend over to the left side of the house if you're looking in from the street
Okay.
to where the start of the ramp is.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Okay, yeah.
Right down to the side.
So he's swooping in.
This is the sidewalk here. Yep. So you come up the drive, back in, ramp, all the way across.
Gotcha, thank you, appreciate it.
So there'll only be one ramp to the side door?
Yeah, so currently the only accessible entrance to the house is in the garage. And the ramp will be built off of the side of the porch to give me access to the front door.
Yeah, going through the garage doesn't sound,
It
it's not the easiest, right?
works out well, but I do need to, yeah, and then given with the weather and stuff also,
Yeah.
gives extra coverage.
I think it fits well with the home, I don't have any problem with, especially the walkway, it's lines up right with the front porch and looks great to me.
Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant?
I have none.
I have none.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question for our planner. Is the front walkway, is that allowed? Per
Yeah.
our code? Okay, so the only variance they need is for the parking pad.
Correct. From my understanding, you can build like an interior walkway of a pretty minimal dimension, like 3 or 4 or 5 feet wide. Obviously that goes into the impervious surface calculations, but we did do a rough estimate. They seem to be pretty well under the 60% maximum requirement there. They seem to be at about 49.9%, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Yeah, because it looks like they don't even have a walkway. They have one of those teeny tiny short ones that goes to the driveway, correct? Yeah. Thank you for speaking, by the way.
And in your report, you had mentioned that there was other existing parking pads that appeared to be in front yards. Are they on Parkland? Because I drove past and I
Yeah.
didn't see them, but
There's one on Parkland and there's one on Rochester.
Yeah,
around
so
the corner. Yeah.
I viewed it just from the street view, to be honest. And I found that the one is addressed Rochester, but the parking space is kind of weirdly accessed from Parkland. It's that corner lot. They kind of
Okay.
have a weird little kind of side jut out parking space that's probably been there forever, which would be legally non-conforming. And then there's also another like really wide kind of circular driveway almost with a big honey locust tree or something in the middle. It's kind of pretty, saving the tree, but it looks like that would probably be non-conforming too, because it does not lead straight to the garage.
It's also like the majority of their front yard.
Yeah.
I looked at it,
Mm,
so.
Yeah, there's a couple non-conforming situations, but there are those two examples that I found just briefly surveying it on Google.
okay. Okay. Are there any questions for our planner before I open up a public hearing?
Good, thank you.
Nope. Okay. All right, it's 7:41. I'm going to open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item? If so, you could just approach the podium. You could just state your name and your address.
Sure. Mike Morelli, I'm at 573 Parkland. I live right across from these guys.
Uh-huh.
They're good neighbors. They take care of their place. He should get it, right?
Mhm.
We also live right next door to a parking lot. So it's not a big difference having a parking lot right next to us and having a handicap accessible parking space. So, hopefully you guys, I'll look at it and it's totally fine. All
Okay.
right.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, is there anybody else wishing to speak on this item? Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Morelli. It's 7:42. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam Chair, I propose a motion to approve the request of variance from the requirements of sections 5.1 B.1A to permit a parking space within the required front yard of the single-family home. As requested, review of the criteria for the variances per the section 34.7.15D of the zoning ordinance. A non-use dimensional variance may be allowed by the Zoning Board of Appeals only in cases involving practical difficulties when the evidence in the official record of an appeal supports all of the findings. The practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property of the person requesting the variance and the results from the conditions which do not exist generally throughout the city. Secondly, the practical difficulties will result in a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than one mere inconvenience or inability to attain a higher financial return. Thirdly, allowing the non-use dimensional variance will result in substantial justice being done. Considering the public benefits intended to be secured by this article, the individual hardships that will be suffered by a failure of the board to grant this variance, the rights of others whose property would be affected by the allowance of the variance. Fourthly, the variance did not arise from the actions of the applicant or previous landowner. The variance requested is not based solely on financial need or circumstances. Additionally, I'd like to impose that no vehicles will encroach onto the city's street right of way, thus blocking the public sidewalk.
Okay.
And I also would like to add that the impervious surface coverage calculation appears to comply roughly at 50%.
Thank you, Cindy.
You're welcome.
Did you also want to add that caveat about not having a car parked there from not storage?
Yes.
Thank you. Then I will second that motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, Nick, can you take the roll, please?
Ms. Diane Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins,
Yes.
Ms. Cindy Smith.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
good luck. Thanks, neighbors.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is for 850 North Rochester Road. A public hearing on a variance from zoning ordinance section 4.42A to allow for an automobile repair garage within 200 feet of a residential zoned district. Is there somebody here to representing the applicant?
Madam Chair, before we begin the next agenda item, we do just want to share that for your guys' sake and then for the applicants that as this board is a 5-member board and it requires an affirmative vote of all 3 members to grant a variance with only 4 members present and not the full board. The appellant can make their case, have the public hearing, and if they choose to wait to the next ZBA meeting to have a full complement on the board, that is their pleasure. But they have to make that decision before the vote is called. So apologize for not doing that before the previous agenda item. Obviously, it didn't affect it, but I want to make that clear for the next 2 cases for your guys' case, the applicants, and then the public here as well. So thank you.
Okay, so just to clarify, an affirmative vote would have to be at least 3.
Correct.
And for me to make a motion to approve or deny.
Correct.
Okay.
And so if an applicant feels that they want to wait for a full board to, that would be in their favor, they have the ability to, like I said, have the public hearing, have discussion, and then request to postpone it to a previous or to another ZBA meeting down the road to have the full board present.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Apologize for interrupting. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Okay, thank you. Okay, you just state your name and your address?
Yep, Tim Dearman, 3841 Green Hills Village Drive, Nashville, Tennessee. I am a partner with Old Acre McDonald. We're a developer. We do caliber collisions in about 10 states. We got a few going on here in Michigan right now, so. CMU grad, got married in Rochester, so I used to live here, but now I live in Nashville, but very familiar with this area.
Well, welcome back.
Well, thank you. It's good to be back. Good to be back. And it's a non-use variance we're requesting for caliber collision. And I guess instead of, it's a similar use that's there today with vets being repaired and reconditioned. I guess instead of Corvettes, we'd be doing all different types of cars. They've got 4 open in the state and we're growing. They've got over 1,700 nationwide. They provide really good jobs, good growth opportunities because of their size. They're a great corporate citizen. They give back to the community. They get very involved in every city they've been in. And we found them really a great client to work with. I think I also have some people joining, like if there's some technical questions, I think Melissa Hernandez, our architect, might be online. I don't know if she's able to chime in, but I wanted to mention that Melissa Hernandez and Gus Wilson.
It doesn't look like anyone's joined us online, but if they do join the meeting, we'll have our staff.
It's not the first time I've been left on an island alone. But I think that Giffel's report was spot on and just summarizes it very well. And we would be upgrading the inside, but really not expanding the building, just painting, putting up new fencing where needed. That's pretty much it.
Mhm. Okay.
So it's a car place right now, right?
It is.
Okay.
They have a paint booth and everything in there already.
Okay.
They do. I think it's called Vet Shop.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Vet Shop.
Okay. I don't remember that place being in disrepair or anything. Are you just gonna change the colors and stuff? Or you?
Well, I call it caliberize it. It's they've got the nomadic desert. It's what it's called. It's a good looking building, but I mean
Yeah.
that's really what it is. the fencing and the building, they get everything to match.
Mhm.
So their hours are very similar. They're not open on weekends. They're closed by 5:30, Monday through Friday.
What time do you open?
Very similar to what 7:30 in the morning.
Okay.
7:30 to 5:30, 5 days a week.
Okay.
And that would be Saturday and Sunday closed.
That's correct. That is correct.
So you say in your, or in this paperwork written by Brett Flory, it says the hardship exists in the fact that zoning ordinance does not allow building use for repair operations located within 200 feet. But if that one is already, is this because you're a new business moving in?
I believe that's,
Is that correct?
I believe that's the case.
The existing use, it would be legal non-conforming.
Right,
And so because the ownership is transitioning and effectively the business is changing too, because they're specific to Corvettes at this moment, and they're
Right.
doing general auto collision. That's why they're here in front of you today.
okay, that's what I figured. I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
If you guys do recall, there was a similar case that we
Yeah.
heard earlier this year with the same exact
I
situation.
already did one this year.
I think there's maybe 3 similar scenarios within a 2-block distance of this that we kind of looked
Yeah.
at.
And just the special land use provisions of the zoning ordinance actually require a resubmittal for a new
Right,
owner
that's
or
what I mean.
user. So, yeah.
And so this applicant will fall through the same process, pending approval by each board. And so that's why they applied for the variance, and then they'll go in front of the planning commission pending your guys' approval and apply for a special land use as well as their site plan.
Gotcha. So I appreciate the amount of information that was in this packet. It was really helpful. And I just wanted to bring up to the board if you care, but if you look at the overhead, and I run by this building all the time, there's it's like a soil rock landscaping business right next door. So it's like if anything's gonna be dirty, that one's already
Just to the
doing
north,
it.
north of
and
us.
They're gonna be inside, so that was one thing that really like struck me, and the houses that border this, I know it's 200 feet, but it's their backyards, and there's a driveway, I mean, parking lot in part of it, and behind, it just doesn't seem, it seems like a non-issue to me as far as dirt and noise. It's already been that, and it sounds like their normal business hours. I mean, landscapers come to my neighborhood earlier than 7:30, so
Seems like only on Saturdays when you're trying
yeah,
to
pretty
rest, right?
much. So you will then, so what the caliberizing, Andy, do these buildings have to follow like the same, like when we were talking about Church of Clausen and the colors that they had to use in the front? Do you know if that is gonna,
I'm not familiar with colors on are you saying colors on a building?
right?
Okay.
Because I know that, I remember when Church of Clausen came before planning, they were talking about how they couldn't use like, turquoise pebbles on it and stuff.
I'm not.
He has a very, if that's corporate and they have a very specific thing, would he have to get approval from planning?
So that'll be discussed at the site plan level,
Okay.
and I want to say the language, something along the lines of like fits the district, the feel, so it doesn't, so you're not driving down Rochester Road and then boom, a pink building shows up. So you
Okay.
want to keep it routine with what the community looks like.
We'd be fired if we delivered them a pink building. It's
I
like-
know, but
it's-
it's pretty hot right now.
It's like a nice tan, it's tan and black is
Okay.
really their desert, they call it desert. Nomadic desert, but it's like a tan, light brown.
I do not have any questions.
I didn't have any more. I feel like I was just asking all of the questions, so.
Okay. I just have a question. So how many cars would you expect to keep outside?
You know, I'd have to, I don't have the site plan for, I thought it was like 58. It's usually in the 50 to 60 range. So they come in. They're stored until they get inside. There's usually around 14 work bays inside, and then the customer comes in and,
Keeps rotating out?
yep, they just rotate it. They pick up their vehicle
Okay.
and take it out.
And then is there a fence
Yes, we have,
around? Okay.
there's a gate with vision slats in there. So you right now there's a solid fence around, but usually when we do a ground up one, we put in a fence with vision slats, so you can't even see the vehicles that are back there waiting to be repaired.
Okay.
We screen that.
Okay.
We do that everywhere, whether
So
it's.
are you gonna do that at this
Oh, yeah,
location?
yes, there will be a
Okay.
fence around everything. The only cars that will be in front are customers coming to do paperwork. Everything else is behind the
Everything
fence.
else will be in the back. Okay,
That's correct.
all right. Is there any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
So how close are they to the existing homes?
So I believe in the staff report, I documented maybe distance from lot line. I think I said roughly 28 feet from the lot line. And then, you're pretty far, pretty subjective, but you are, I'd say well over 100 feet from any home building to building wise. From a quick just aerial measurement, I'm getting about 140 or so feet
Okay.
to the closest home
Okay.
from building line.
Mhm.
So property line, that's more like 110.
Okay. Okay. Are there other questions for our planner before I open up the public hearing? Okay. Okay, it's 7:56. I'm gonna open up a public hearing. Is there anybody wishing to speak on this item? If so, just state your name and your address.
Absolutely. Good evening. Jennifer Burney, 925 Hendrickson. Resident for 13 years. I can see the bay door from my porch. I can hear all the sounds, at times very loud. My concerns, it has been quieter since the letter arrived in our mailboxes a couple short weeks ago. What are the plans to buffer the sound of these, it sounds like very high-powered Corvettes? Honestly, it sounds like jet engines from 7 a.m. to at least some days, especially in the summer, 8 p.m., 8:30, to the point where I've broken many coffee mugs. So again, what are the plans to buffer sound, toxin storage, disposal, even staff safety, just based on the noise alone? I also have noticed there's a large dumpster out back already. Have they already started work? Lastly, my biggest concern would be property value. You're bringing in a lot of vehicles, chemicals, etc. We have to smell it. It's different than a landscape place, and I actually really don't understand that because that only comes a couple times when the wind blows. Okay. This is different. I'm all for people making money. I don't think it's a good fit for Clausen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before our next neighbor comes up, if I could ask that people in the gallery keep the noise at a minimum, it's distracting up here. Thank you.
Jeff Rathgab, I'm at 927 Hendrickson. We too can see, we have a 2-story home, so we can look directly down into this place. And my basic thing is these zoning rules are put in place for reasons to keep the community and the neighborhoods nice and the way we want them for the residents. By granting the variance, there's just no benefit to the surrounding community residents that makes it worthwhile or a good idea. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Todd Renshaw, and my wife Suzanne, I think will speak in a minute as well. We live at 913 Hendrickson, which our property abuts the back wall of the Rochester property. Is it okay if I ask Mr. Dearman a question? So are you representing the owners or are you the owner of
We
those
developed.
businesses?
You have to give approval.
Okay.
Are the owners here?
So if you could just make your comments and your questions, and then
All
we'll
right.
ask him to come up and.
Sure.
And address those. Thank you.
So I looked at the website for that business and there's one called Vet Lab and there's one called Fab9 Tuning. And they give the impression that they're only selling automotive parts and accessories out of that business. But as others have said, they're working on tuning up vets that are really, really loud. And despite what they say about, oh, it won't be on the weekends, it won't be at night. I've been woken up before at 1, 2 in the morning by these revving sounds going off. And this was before I knew where they were coming from, mad enough to get out of my bed, go walk down the street, try to figure out where it's coming from. And of course, then they don't do it. Gone back to bed. And once again, the revving happens again. So I would say they've not been the greatest neighbors. There's also a lot of junk that kind of comes over our wall, garbage that's probably flying out of their dumpster, paperwork, stuff like that. So that's not really helpful either. I don't know if there's any representatives of the duplexes that are really close, but if they're revving those engines with the garage doors up like it sounds, it's got to be horrible for those people because they're right in line of it. We're, a little bit diagonal from those doorways. So my short answer is no, don't allow this variance. I can only see where the noise would get worse if we do that. That's what I feel.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Suzanne Renshaw and I'm at 913 Hendrickson. And I guess I just don't like the idea of a collision place. We have one within a block and it's a junkyard. It's a total junkyard. Every time I walk by it, the same cars are sitting there. And I'm guessing they're undrivable. They're from accidents. They just leave them all over the place. That place needs to be fenced in. It's a mess. And I'm just worried about cars all over the place. He's saying 50 cars. I can't even imagine you've got the variances and everything. 50 cars can fit in that area. I don't understand. That's my biggest complaint is I'm always in the basement, so I never really hear that much upstairs. I do hear you're talking about the landscaping place. I'll be out in the yard and I've been with people and they'll go, what was that? And I'll go, what? And they're like, that banging. And I'm like, okay, oh yeah, I don't even notice it. Okay. But I will notice because I walk all the time. I will notice if there's, collision stuff everywhere. So I would say no again, because any closer to our house is not any better. And also, I didn't even understand that there was a business there anymore. They've been storing cars back there. We get like the car paperwork flying in our yard all the time about cars. So they were storing cars there before that. I didn't even know there was a business in there. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else wishing to speak on this item? Okay, yeah, let me close the public hearing and then I'll call you back up. Okay. Seeing nobody else wishing to speak, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:03. So would the applicant like to come back up and address some of these concerns?
Yeah, please.
I actually think that the sounds that you're hearing are partly because they're only doing muscle cars. I mean, they're doing Corvettes. We don't do any tune-ups. It's if you're Tahoe, if you're whatever you drive, your child backs into a tree, whatever, they fix that. They're doing body work. We don't. There's no tune-ups involved. And I represent the new tenant. Just to clarify that. So I think the other thing is it's an independently owned business. They may operate at midnight and when they're available. This is a company that's got 1,700 locations nationwide and they've got strict standards. Both their biggest state that they have, I think over 400 locations is California. So I mean, as far as cleanliness, materials handling, they have third-party inspectors that check. I don't know about this business that's there today, but I can probably tell you they probably don't have the standards for third-party inspection. And I know that they don't let their employees do after-hour repairs. So they're closing at 5:30 and they're enjoying their nights and they're enjoying their weekends. I mean, it's a big corporation. Like I said, they're over 7 billion in sales, 1,700 locations. So a lot of the things that happen at an independent shop, even when they're not required to put in the screening at a location, they put it in everywhere they go. I mean, it's just a matter of their practice. I think it's also related to insurance. They want it to be secure. You would want your vehicle to be secure. You referenced the one down the street. I mean, I think you would see the operation would be night and day, just in terms of the way they take care of the property and the way they run their business.
Permission for a rebuttal?
If the chair wishes to open up a public hearing again, it's up to you.
Yeah, I'll open up one more. And then we'll close it back again. So it's 8:06. I'll reopen the public hearing.
Again, Jennifer Burney, 925 Hendrickson. Luckily I work from home. And I've spent many of hours sitting on my back deck trying to catch forgive me, 47 times a day. So my question to you, Tim, when did you take ownership of the building? Because this was just yesterday. Okay, so you can't refute the fact that the noise we hear, you've heard it. Is it going to change? Do we know that?
That's a revving engine.
I don't. We don't care.
No, I know.
So here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to try to be as polite as I can. Close the doors, OSHA safety, sound buffering, all of it. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure behind me has no issue. But until that happens, it happened last night at 5:45 PM, and I didn't have my phone next to me.
Okay.
I understand that you insurance and garden cars. I'm gonna back up my neighbor. 50, no. The noise, no. The garbage, yes. We all pick it up. Thank you,
Okay.
board, for your time.
Thank you.
Again, that's none of
Is it-
us. I mean, we're not the current operator, so.
You can't speak for someone.
Is there anybody else wishing to speak?
You were about to say it's a collision shop only, or?
Yes, we don't do any tune-ups. It's a collision shop. We don't do oil changes. We do a body paint. Their slogan is restoring the rhythm of your life. It's like, you know, you want a good doctor, you want a good place to go get your car back on the road, whether you're going to school, going to work, whatever you need to do. That's what they do. So they have a nice lobby where you come in, feel comfortable, check in, pick up your vehicle, hopefully, you know, a week later or whatever, it's ready and you're back on the road. But you don't go there to buy parts. You don't go there to get a tune-up. You don't go there to get an oil change. They would be on your insurance list if unfortunately you got into an accident. You'd have a choice between maybe some locals and Caliber Collision.
Mhm.
And
Excuse me just for a second, Tim. I'm going to close the public hearing. It's 8:08 and we're going to close the public hearing.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I did just want to make a point that this is not going to be any closer to you than the existing building. I think someone mentioned that it's just that it's a new owner and they have to go through the process again. So they're not making the building any bigger or moving it in any way. So just so that everyone's on the same page.
And if you feel so inclined, you can even ensure that in any kinds of conditions of approval as well. Because at this point, they haven't presented the city a site plan.
Correct. And part of that too is pending the decision tonight, instances like soundproofing, wall barriers, dumpster enclosures, that's all taken care of through the site plan. And I understand maybe potentially coming out to another meeting might be an inconvenience, but if you guys bring some of those concerns to the site plan hearing by the planning commission, that is the board that will be able to make that determination on dumpster location and some of those instances. And then just one thing I just want to remind everyone is that the existing owner is different than the applicant here today. And so the business is potentially going to change. And as he was sharing, the hours of operation are going to change, the style of business is going to change. And so that's just something I just wanted to remind everyone today, and that you're only thinking about as the ZBA is the distance requirement and how it fits with the ordinance comparatively to how what they're looking to deviate from our ordinance and how it fits in the district.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thank you. I do have a follow-up question to that. Is there any ordinance where there would be prohibited number of repair shops in one block? If there's already 3 there, do we need 3 more? What are we as a city trying to? Are we looking to be an industrial site?
And so part of that, I feel bad saying this again, is that's kind of what the planning commission does when they look at the special land use. And so that's why there's permitted uses in our zoning ordinance, which, retail, restaurants, stuff like that. And then a district like the industrial limited one that they're applying for, the ZBA is strictly looking at the variance and not the type of use that it necessarily is. That's what the planning commission will do, and they determine how it fits into the district.
Okay, then my next question is, the applicant has said they do not yet own the building or the land.
We have it under contract.
When will it be closing?
Right now it's right around the end of the year.
I personally have a hard time approving something for a change of owner that hasn't happened yet. Is this typical?
Well, if you want.
It is, in real estate, it is typical for, he
A
would.
6-month lag?
Well, and especially if they were to purchase the property and weren't granted the variance or site plan or special land use, then they're tied to the building without an operating business.
We
Okay.
wouldn't want to be a landlord just to keep the vet guys in there revving their engines. We want to buy it to put our national tenant in there.
Mhm.
So you're exactly right, Nick. That's right.
And that's the common thing with variances too. I mean, a lot of variances that you see are for homes that people already have and are trying to make changes based on the ordinance. But when you're going into the commercial side of things, and you have someone wanting to occupy a building and they have to do some type of change and whatnot, they're not going to risk their capital until they get full guarantee that they're going to be able to.
So explain to me how the 200 feet requirement came about at which time and date?
So
Oh,
I can't speak when that was done. But what I can tell you is that ordinance is written there, and this is the only district that even considers allowing auto collision shops in them. And by not allowing them within 200 feet of a residential property, it effectively zones auto collision shops out, which is not a legal thing to do.
So to Cindy's question, if the variance is granted to this applicant, their deal falls through, then somebody else would have to come back.
So right, the variance would just become null and void. Effectively, they couldn't transfer it to another applicant.
no, variance sticks to the land.
We can look that up real quick. I'd like to see what the ordinance's provisions say.
As a neighbor in the community of such an area, I too am concerned about the sound levels, the exhaust, the toxins, because right now I walk out my backyard and all I smell is fire and greasy donuts. And it's to add more toxins into the air. Who's going to monitor that? Is that at a local standpoint or is that at a county standpoint?
So collision shops have certain standards that they have to meet throughout via the state and county. The city doesn't have the mechanisms to enforce those. And because this is a national chain, they have their own certain standards that they like to meet. And just to go back with what I was saying about, oh gosh, I lost it. I apologize. If it comes back, I'll share. I
Okay.
apologize.
So, and real quick, I can clarify the whole variance running with the land question. So variances generally do run with the land, not a person. However, if essentially the applicant needs to initiate it within a year. So if an applicant who obtains a variance granted them by the zoning board of appeals, they need to get a building permit and they need to get their planning approvals done within a year. Otherwise, the variance does become null and void. So yes, technically it could change hands and somebody else could pick it up and run with it. However, there are the other zoning provisions for special land uses where special land use actually runs with a tenant or an applicant or a user. So they would need to go back, before this whole planning process and start over again if a new user did want to change hands. So the applicant here has a year to initiate the variance if it's granted tonight.
And then I did want to touch on that too. And so if the variance was granted tonight and then their deal falls through, then the variance is still active, but if another applicant wanted to put in an auto collision shop, they'd still have to go get their special land use and site plan approved by the planning commission.
Within a year.
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you know when this was? The 200 feet, because obviously these houses haven't moved. And this building hasn't moved. So how? I'm just trying to be neighborly, and I wouldn't want to hear this coming out of my backyard. I wouldn't want to smell the smells, knowing that there's already 3 on the street within a block already. Countless others on the other side, and maybe 4 others in Clawson that I can name off the top of my head. Do we want to be known as the auto repair city? That's a question that I pose to everybody. But do you know when the ordinance was? Can we look at that, or it's just an unknown?
It's currently unknown.
Okay,
We would need to do some digging into the
okay.
archives. I do want to say that there are some performance standards that a use needs to adhere to. So I think that is these are good points that definitely need to be vetted by the planning commission when this goes before the planning commission. Those are ways that you can regulate that the planning commission, the approval body of the use as a whole can use to regulate things like noise, hours of operation and things like that.
Right. And based on what he shared, it sounds like that they're going to be changing from the existing use anyway.
Can I ask a question? When is the next BZA meeting?
It should be
Monthly.
a
The
month.
third Thursday of the month at 7:30.
I'm just thinking between being able to show things like a dumpster enclosure, cut sheets on our ventilation, how we handle that, oil, water separator cut sheets, how we handle that. In the history, I'm guessing somewhere down the line, somebody got a variance, somebody got a use variance in that building. It's probably been there for, I have no idea. I'm speculating, but we've seen that before in our business because 90% of the time we're either getting a conditional or special use for this use. So, and we do come across that, but just curious because I think I'd rather have an expert here to speak to some of those things and have time to research some of your questions and address everybody as well. I mean, we don't want our client coming in here. They're great neighbors and, we want to make sure that we answer all the questions. So I'd rather do that.
Okay, all right. Is there any questions for the applicant from the board that you'd like him to address in October?
No,
than
I
what
think
you-
I think he's already got a grasp of what everybody's looking for.
Yeah.
Yep.
I do.
I agree.
I mean, I think I
And
do.
it sounds like they would comply with everybody's ideal, but that's yet to be seen.
So Nick, do we have to formally table this or?
Correct. And so just for clarity's sake, we would just want to have you make that formal request to the board that you'd wish they postpone it. The board would make a motion to postpone to a future ZBA meeting. You could say the October meeting, but sometimes we kind of like leaving it open at it just in case there's certain scenarios that they can't get their application updated. So, but it's entirely up to the board.
Okay,
I do request a deferral to the
Okay.
next available meeting.
okay, okay.
And then per variance, one public hearing is required. So the public hearing for this variance did occur today, so another notice will not have to go out. But for the public's sake that's here, if they do want to attend, the next ZBA meeting is October 19th at 7:30 PM.
And is it fair to say, when are the agendas posted online? If the neighbors wanna, in case in
Yeah.
case it happens in
We try to
November.
have them up for the ZBA 5 to 7 days beforehand.
Okay. Okay, so if you go on the city's website, you should be able to find, to make sure it's on the October agenda.
And then just for the public's sake too, I'm Nick Stephens, I'm the assistant city manager. I would love to talk to you guys, if you want to get some more information on this, I can give you guys my business card and we can chat about it in greater detail. Cause I totally understand your concerns and would love to engage with you guys to see how, what can be done in the future.
I'd also like to add, you went to the vet website, it sounded like. Go to the Caliber Collision website when you get a chance. It's calibercollision.com. Excuse me?
It's no consequence at this point. You don't own it.
That's who would be in that building. It just tells you more about the company.
Okay,
Just this,
So-
you don't have to, just a suggestion.
okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
So I need a motion to table,
They postponed it.
postpone, I'm sorry, to postpone,
My
The
word
variance.
here.
the variance.
Madam
Sorry.
Chair, I move that we postpone the variance request for 850 North Rochester to the next available ZBA meeting.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. I have a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Cindy. I have a motion and a second. Can you take the roll, Nick? This is just to postpone.
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes. Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Miss Cindy Smith,
Yes.
Miss Diane Smith.
Yes,
Thank you all.
thank
Have a
you.
good
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you guys gonna take off? Okay, then I'll just keep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is for 436 to 456 West 14 Mile Road. A public hearing on a variance from the requirements of section 4.3.A.3 to permit a 20-foot side east setback, a reduction from the minimum 27.9 foot required setback, and a variance from the requirements of section 4.3.B.6 to permit a multiple family apartment building with a density of 25 total rooms exceeding the 24-room maximum density requirement. Is there somebody from the applicant wishing to speak? Okay. You just state your name and your address.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Aiden Calabat with Calabat Engineering on behalf of the property owner. Business address for the record is 31333 Southfield Road, Suite 250, Beverly Hills, Michigan. So we're here tonight requesting two variances for this project. The project is a proposed multifamily residential construction. It is in the current RM district. That RM district is kind of a unique one in the city of Clawson because many of the properties are still used as single family residences, as these three properties are. although they're zoned and master planned for multifamily. So there's a few other multifamily that have been converted over the years that are further west on 14 Mile Road. So this is another property that they're looking to, it's an infill development, trying to bring it up to today's zoning ordinance and zoning standards, because obviously the 3 single family homes are non-conforming existing uses. So the 3 single family homes, again, are primarily have been kind of rental properties. And some of them, I don't think there's been great occupancy in some of those. So this project would, obviously clean up that, would provide, a need for the city of Clawson for some multifamily rental units that would promote, new residents. We're hoping for kind of new younger families to start choosing Clawson for, apartments and things like that. And then what we find typically is that once you start, moving into a community as your first home, or, coming into the professional world, moving out of parents' house, that community tends to be one that you look towards for, future long-term residents as well too. So I think this project brings a good opportunity to that zoning district to try and bring it up to today's standards. There are 2 kind of unique challenges with the property, which result in the requested variances. The first variance I'll touch on is the density request. So based on the ordinance, the density calculations are based off of a room count, which is determined based off of the number and types of units that you have. And they're permitted, and we are about 108 square feet of total lot size, shy of what would be required for the 25 units. So, typically when you do your total lot size divided by, I think the requirement, and I apologize, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it came out to like 24.86 or 24.92, something like that. So we're kind of looking at a rounding up to that 25 on the density. So that's kind of the request. It's important to note that we do meet all the parking standards for the property, which are also based off of, unit counts and unit styles as well. So it's, honestly, it's kind of a difficult ordinance to navigate in that, there's these 2 standards, which one based on size, the other based on parking and availability, that you can kind of you can meet one and you kind of get close to meeting the other one, but not quite there. That's also a testament to the shallow depth and width of these properties, as they are, again, infill properties that we're looking to convert to meet the current zoning ordinance. The second variance is, again, another unique situation because there is a measured minimum side yard setback, which is met, which is the 20 feet. And then there's this additional calculated side yard setback, which is, as far as we've been able to gather, a large intent of that was to allow for, fire access in larger buildings. So that's the character of why it's a measure of the length of that building and the height of that building, which establishes what that calculated setback is really to kind of try and make sure that, from a firefighting perspective, they have the ability to get in and around and service those properties. The unique situation that we have here is that, obviously now with today's standards, this building would be fully fire suppressed. Whereas when their ordinances were potentially written, that wasn't necessarily a requirement for multifamily uses. So this kind of negates some of the extreme need for that, that larger setback. And also the character of the neighbors that surround it on the east and west of it. So on the east side, where the variance is being requested, we've got a church property, which is a religious facility. That property does not meet this that property doesn't meet the minimum required setbacks nor the calculated setback as it stands. And there's actually an encroachment from a drive aisle on that side as well. The west side of the property still remains a single family residential home. So while there is an opportunity to potentially eliminate and adhere to that calculated side yard setback on the east side, the result would be that on the west side property line, you would lose the proposed landscaping buffer that's currently shown, which is not required in that zoning district, that those side yards can, the parking lot can extend and has a 0 lot setback on the side yards. The green belt requirements are again at the front and the rear of the RM zoning district. So when we looked at that would eliminate the need for the variance, but we felt that imposed a hardship on that existing single family residential home, and that, better use of the land would be to meet the east side minimum side yard setbacks and provide that landscape buffer on the west side, which, kind of just separates this site. Beyond that, this site is obviously, this project would bring a lot of growth and investment into the city of Clawson. It would increase the tax base there. Again, as I said, it's going to, bring the zoning ordinance, bring this property more into compliance with the zoning ordinance than it currently is. And it's also going to have a brand new stormwater management system too, which would help reduce, stormwater impacts on the property. So right now, with those homes, there really isn't anything. So when it rains, all the water kind of sheets off of their driveways and their roofs and just basically all runs down into 14 Mile Road, which kind of adds an additional tax on, public infrastructure, on storm sewers and things like that. So this project would capture a lot of that rainfall, detain it on site underground, treat it before detaining it, and then discharge it at a controlled rate, which is, more in keeping with today's, engineering standards. So again, we humbly lay these requests before you and are here to answer any questions or concerns you have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? You can stay up there.
I did have one.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when you said you were short like 100 or so, 108 square feet,
Correct.
looking at the variance, you've got depicted one efficiency unit. Is that the extra one that's short the 100 feet?
No. So the way the zoning ordinance is written, the efficiency unit is a studio unit, essentially. The efficiency units are written in to kind of be an encouragement into multifamily. So we want to try and add those as much as possible. Usually those are, seen as like 10% of your total. So that's why you got a 14 unit building, or a 13 unit building. I apologize. So you'd look to have one efficiency unit in there.
Okay.
Having the efficiency unit adds one room of space to it, but in my opinion, no, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's more so the requirement of the 1-bedroom units. So 1-bedroom units are actually counted as 2 rooms, and 2-bedroom units are actually counted as 2 rooms. So it's kind of unique. It's not something I've seen in too many communities. A lot of times there's a difference between a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom. Usually it's like 1.5 per 1-bedroom and maybe 2 or 2.5 per 2-bedroom. So that I think is what really drove the room count up higher, because the efficiency unit doesn't really drive up the room count. It's only 1 room,
Okay.
but all your 1-bedrooms drive it up because they're all each 2 rooms.
And if the 25 total room variance was approved, would the parking spaces match the 25 versus the 24?
Correct. Yeah. It's currently parked for the 13 units and styles that we have shown.
Okay, thank you.
And the 108 square feet is on total lot area. There's like 24,898, I think, or 892 instead of 25,000 square feet. This.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I've noticed over the past few months that this group often comes before boards to ask for variances for larger buildings, more density. I'm wondering what makes you do that in this particular case, because it seems like if we're asking for a variance for space and for density, couldn't you make it smaller?
So I can't speak to any of the previous applications that the owner has made. This is the first project that I've been involved with them on.
Okay.
Looking at this project, it's versus I think the one that they did around the corner, Mount Elliott Park was the last one I think that they did. This is a tighter site. I think it's a more unique scenario than that one is. It's in a different district than the previous site was. And I think with some of the challenges, obviously as a developer, you've got to make sure that your investment land costs is, when you do a project that you're going to invest a lot of money in, that there's, the hope of return and profit, right? So you got to kind of have a little minimum set through the course of design and back and forth with the planning commission. They have reduced the total number of units to kind of get a lot closer to compliance. And we've also made adjustments to the number and styles of some of the units as well to get things, a lot closer there.
Okay.
I can help with that. My name's Anthony Randazzo. I'm the developer. We're fortunate to be here and we appreciate it very much. However, the sites that are left are unique and that obviously they haven't been built on. So as a result of that, you need a little tugging and pulling. We had gone through a lot of refinements on this particular site by reducing the size of it. I think we started off with, is it 14 or 15 units?
Yeah.
We shrunk it down. In addition to that, our neighbor, we were gracious enough to offer him a variance so that an easement so that he's in compliance with his parking lot, which is on our land. And, I do think it's noteworthy to point out that the original, obviously intent of a lot of these setbacks was the fact that they had fire suppression, fire issues, which is noble, right? But the fact that they're now suppressed, I think circumvents some of that need. And we were honored to be able to have landscaping, which I think is critical. We try to over landscape. I don't know if you've seen Elliott. I think it looks pretty nice. We put in a lot more than we had to, and we want to do that because I think it's imperative that we, create trees, in these cities that are a lot of asphalt. So could we avoid the variance? Probably. Is it good for the neighbors in the city? I don't think so.
Which neighbors are you speaking of though? Because
Well, to
think
the
that-
west. Because we're allowed to bring a
the one
parking lot.
neighbor, that's,
Yeah, and future.
Okay.
Because, I think that wherever you can create trees and that kind of thing, you should. We were also sensitive to the neighbors to the north. They had some flooding issues and we helped them out with that. So assuming, we're considered meritorious in this event, we would like to continue to do that.
is that easement agreement, has that been formally logged or signed?
It will be once we're
Fine,
approved.
thank you.
Yeah. We do have a binding letter
Mhm.
with them, and it's subject to obviously solving this. Make sense? Thank you.
What have you done with the neighbors to the north? You said you had helped them. I was
They
curious
had
about
a wall, and we're gonna allow the water to percolate through because they have water issues. And we're gonna absorb it on our property. And we've done a calculation on it that it'll solve it, correct?
Correct.
So we don't go into a community trying to create issues. Obviously, people don't want, in some instances, growth. I get that. But we think this is an improvement. The homes there are dilapidated. And by solving some of the water issues, which I think all new growth should do, right? You're supposed to make it better. It'll also help our neighbors.
Yeah, just to further elaborate on that. So couple of issues, obviously we've been through a few public hearings, and we've heard from, actually several of the faces that I'm sure we'll hear again tonight. And honestly, the reception that they've given us, the feedback they've given us has been great. A lot of the main concerns were, again, like you said, with drainage. They've got a real drainage problem in their backyards. It's not something, I tried to reiterate before, it's not something that is created or caused by the 3 homes that are currently there, nor is it going to be exacerbated by this project. But as Anthony mentioned, one of the things that we are doing is, since that ponding tends to happen at the rear of the site, kind of where our properties back up to each other, we don't have the ability to go into their property and regrade and fix those issues for them. But we can accommodate we have got a screen wall at the north end of our property that we will make sure does not further block or hinder any, if water needs a path and needs to run off, that there are weep holes in it, there are drainage holes in it that allow it to run off into our site. In general, the areas in the, the northern portion then of our site and the southern portion of their site are relatively flat. We are going to be lowering the northern portion just a bit to capture some of our on-site drainage from our property line. So anything that does come up against the property line will be encouraged to cross our property line and into our detention systems as well, where it can be, properly stored and released. And then the other aspect that we did, comply with their requests is the ordinance requires a 4'6" minimum screen wall at, abutting the two properties. We raised that up to 6 feet at the, at their behest, and understandably so. They don't want a lot of lighting, or, they don't want to see too much. They want a little bit of privacy in their backyards. And honestly, 4'6" is not very, that's us. Yeah, you can see right over it. So, we understood completely, and we bring that up to here right now. So.
So you've already received plan commission approval?
Yeah.
Yeah, subject to variances being approved.
Okay.
And we went through that process because we wanted to go through the vetting process of the actual site plan first. So that when we came to this body, it had been vetted, it had been, kind of nailed down, all the critical aspects had been discussed and adjusted. And that we came to you with the absolute, minimum variances that would be required, focused.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I just wanted to be sure it's apartments and not condos, correct? 'Cause it
Correct.
says both in different places.
No, it is apartments, rental units.
It says condos and apartments, and then on here it says condos.
Yeah, although they're separately metered. So the logical intent, most places that are developed today would be having the ability to condominiumize them in the future with separate utilities.
And is that your desire?
I won't be around, but logically, it can be done, and it generally is done. It's not our initial desire, no. However, it has every opportunity to become that way.
So they operate them as rental properties, and they have several, and they continue to operate them as rental properties, but they're set up in a way that if they they were to sell them at some point, that, somebody else who purchased them may feel that, owner occupancy is more important than, they'd rather have owner occupancy, so, break it up, condomize it, and sell those units as opposed to continuing to manage rental properties. But their business is in managing rental properties. So, yep.
So the easement that's contingent, but do you own the property already?
Yes.
Okay, so it is.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, these were properties that you've owned for a while or recently
So
purchased?
the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So we took the risk of buying it, subject to hopefully improving something. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for our planner before I open up a public hearing? No.
Not currently.
Okay, right, thank you. It's 8:42. I'm gonna open up a public hearing for this matter. Is there anybody in the public wishing to speak? If so, just state your name and your address.
My name is Sean Sitterlit. I am at 431 Broadacre. I'm the only house that really has the cement wall still there. And I'm surrounded with privacy fence. So my yard is surrounded and it's beautiful, privacy, blah, 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 and all that. We have a drainage system that goes from our yard out to Custer, which is east. So the water is really not that bad for us going out that way. For anybody else, I don't know. The wall was built when the church and the house that's directly behind us, because I believe the house and the church were one thing way back when. The wall was built back then, so the wall is actually on the property. So I would still like the wall. 6 foot is fine, but I would like a brick wall. All the apartments down west have a brick wall or cement wall behind theirs. So I think that should go hand in hand with this build too. I'm not against the build at all. I'm totally okay with it. But to match with the other apartments along that, there's only 2 or 3 houses in between each apartment that don't have the wall. But like I said, the other apartments do have a wall. That's my only concern. I want a
Okay.
wall, 6-foot wall. It's already 6 floors taller than I am. I'm not very tall, so. But like I said, if we could keep that wall, it'd be sweet. But it's on their property at the same time.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I don't remember what the building material was for the wall. At some point was vinyl proposed. So,
So all the obscuring wall has been figured out at the planning commission stage, and so the main thing the board should be looking at right now is the two
I
variances.
understand. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
It's,
there any-
it's a cement wall, you know, CMU. Similar to the one we're doing on, what we've done everywhere. You have a good requirement in that regard.
So you would be putting up a cement wall?
Yeah, it's, we.
So not a
agreed to
chain
that.
link.
No.
Removing the existing behind.
If you could, if you want to speak, we're in a public hearing right now. If you want to speak, please approach the podium and state your name and your address.
Hi, I'm Peggy Rybicki, 441 Broadacre. He was trying to ask if they're going to remove Sean's existing wall or add to it.
So we're required to put it on the property line. And it would have to be new. So Sean, is your wall on the property line?
Yeah. Yeah,
On your-
came in to put the stakes in, so that wall is actually on your.
So reality of it is you have a footing. So I would assume if it's properly done, because it has to be inspected, we would connect to that existing footing and or remove it and put a new footing with a new wall. So that it's consistent, or it'll look funny.
Right, yeah.
Right, yeah. And that's something we conceded, and obviously we're gonna honor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was not wall 6 foot tall.
We can answer after the public hearing.
Mhm.
We can let the public hearing.
No,
Yes.
I can
Yes.
adjust the answers you get.
Okay, and that was another concern of mine because at the planning commission meetings, they promised a wall. The next one, they didn't.
We did something.
It is now. After 3 meetings, it is
Okay.
now. Thank you.
Okay.
I get, I don't have a problem with the building apartment, but my real problem is greed. Why don't they just conform to your variances and leave it at that? They could do one less apartment. They could do, there's options. There's options. And if you give in to them, then you have to give in to all the next dozen apartment buildings that want to go up. They keep trying to call them condos or apartments. There's a big difference. I don't think they're going to improve our property value by no means, just from my own experience. And when it comes to inviting people in those apartments, condos, whatever, to move into the Clausen don't have a problem selling houses. I promise you, you know that. So I just think that's just a shenanigan, but if they get their variances, that's kind of a bummer, but I really would appreciate that you don't do that because I don't trust everything they're saying, to be honest with you, only because that's the way they presented it at the first few meetings. So, I mean, I wouldn't do the variance. I would just let them downsize a little. They're being greedy with the property and everything.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for your comments. Is anybody else wishing to speak?
So my name is Stacy Sitterlet. I'm also at 431 Broadacre. If you were to have to take our wall down, how long would our backyard be open to 14? I have children that I'm concerned about having that wall not there. Would that be put up right away?
Well, we put a construction fence up in the interim, which is secure, but we do it very quickly.
Okay.
And for the record, we've done a couple other projects. They've been well received. And we're professionals at it because we obviously we want to incur the liability for obvious reasons. And I would also like to point out, we are solving an issue that we, didn't buy into. We're inheriting some of the water issues and we're trying to solve it for everybody's sake.
Okay, we're fine about the water. I was just worried about my backyard
Yeah,
being
of course.
open to,
Yeah.
14 when I have small children. They like to be in their
We'd be happy
backyard.
to provide a drawing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to mention too that the water issue is a non-issue. I don't get a drop in my yard. So that was for people who wasn't even connected, I guess, to this property. I'm directly behind them. And when he said making everything look nice and that, so they've owned these 3 houses for a year now. They have looked like heck. They came through this summer, like the minute after the planning commission gave them their semi-approval, and they stripped the siding, brick, whatever was on the houses. And now the black stuff is flopping in. They look like haunted houses now. How long do we have to look at that? And then how long is this project going to take?
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you. Let me get through the rest of the comments and then I'll call you back up to answer. Okay. Is there anybody else in the wishing to speak on this item?
Hi, my name is Mike Danoff, 455 Broadacre. I'm mostly concerned is where their dumpster is gonna be. Cause in the last meeting, they said their dumpster is gonna back up to my yard. And I don't want a dumpster backed up to my yard. Can they put it by the road where the other dumpster on the other apartment is? That's the only thing my biggest problem is.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there anybody else in the public wishing to speak about this item? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:50. Would the applicant come back up and
Yes,
care
absolutely.
to answer some of the questions that were?
Yeah, so to provide some clarification on some of the questions that were proposed with respect to the CMU wall that's currently constructed. The plans as they're submitted now show that staying in place and a new wall being constructed in line with that existing wall and carrying on to the rest of the property. I think to Mr. Randazzo's point was if we find that that wall during construction or the inspectors, building department finds that that wall is for any reason in disrepair, is collapsing, is not structurally safe or sound, then they may require us to take that down and build and rebuild it back in place. But otherwise, the intent would be to maintain it if it's in good condition and then continue the wall thereafter. So if we can avoid taking it down and opening up your rear yard, that's the preference, right? With respect to the dumpster enclosure question, it is backed up into that at that rear property. It is part of the back wall of the dumpster enclosure. It is part of the rear wall of the screening. These items were all reviewed and commented on and addressed at the planning commission and the site plan and special land use hearings, as well as the height of the wall, the material of the wall. The material of the wall did change a few times. We started at 4'6" masonry. The request came in to raise it to 6 foot. We went to 6 foot vinyl fence. And then that didn't get warm reception at all. So we switched it to 6 foot CMU. I think the intent and character has always been to try and work through and address these issues. Again, this is why we went through this process before, coming before this body. So those, at the planning commission level were vetted out and discussed. With respect to the variances at hand, again, the east side yard calculated versus measured, minimum setback does not really have any adverse impacts on the neighbors to the north of this property. Strict adherence with that setback would have an adverse impact on the neighbor to the west of the property, which is why we felt that the variance was a reasonable request for this project. With respect to the density calculations, it's when you have 898 square feet of the required square footage for that additional room. And to be clear, elimination, you could eliminate one of the efficiency units, which again is something that, Clausen and its zoning ordinance encourages. So we'd be taking away an element that the recent updates to the zoning ordinance, intentionally added in there, saying that we want these in our multifamily units and we want a 10%, ratio of them. So I don't think that benefits the community, Clausen. the only other way to meet that is you'd end up having to take away a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom unit, which again puts you well beneath. Now you, instead of, you know, requesting 25 units in 24.8 or 24.9 permitted, you'd be requesting 23 and 24.8 or 24.9 agreement. So it's a, you know, I can understand where some folks might say, well, you're being a bit greedy, but realistically, the strict adherence with that is far more detrimental to the applicant than granting of the variance would be detrimental to the surrounding community. So we feel again that that's a reasonable request too, given the extent of the variance request.
Couple of issues that Mr. Vicky brought up in reference to the condition of the houses. We were uncomfortable with the condition of them, and we had a duty to make sure they were environmentally safe. So they required us to remove the things that were environmental hazards. That's why that was done. And we chose not to continue to allow anyone to live in there. As their leases expired, we did not renew them because we were uncomfortable with the condition of those houses that I guess they could remain, you know, they could fix them up to code, but you know, and in reference to apartments, you have a real strong need. People want to live here. And we're getting an abnormal amount of calls. And the kind of fees that are charged are pretty hefty, uncomfortably hefty, you know, from my perspective with what I grew up with. So you're getting a high caliber of people who test out the market, say, you know, we like it. And then they end up living here, buying homes, which is kind of what you want. You have a shortage, which, you know, of nice new
multifamily.
Yeah, multiple family. And if you pay attention, they're all brick. They're not inexpensively done. So that's just a thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
I just want clarification from whoever can answer this. It's been through site planning approval.
Yep.
There's been 3 or more meetings regarding various things.
Mhm.
And then that brings you here to tonight to ask for the 24 room density requirement variance to 25 and a side yard setback from 27.9 to 20 feet. Now, in all of those meetings from the planning commission, was it discussed what would happen if we complied with a 24 room unit?
Yeah, so again, it was a question and we actually had extensive discussions back and forth with 2 of the planning commissioners, one of whom I believe Commissioner O'Hara, who's no longer on the commission or on, I think he may have sat on this body before too. And he brought up a lot of those concerns and you know, the conversation always ended in, well, it's a tough one. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you kind of meet that because you know, in every step that you attempt to bring it into conformity, you're not off by a lot with that, you know, with the lot acreage and the density requirements.
Every which direction that it can already be.
Yes, yeah. We went from 14 units to 13 units and I extensively, you know, remodeled renovated the first floor plan to add a few more 2-bedroom units and we converted 3 units to 2 units in order to kind of bring that in there. So again, there was a loss of a revenue generating unit. You know, some people may say, oh, you charge more for a 2 than a 1, but really it's the number of units, which is, you know, brings you your revenue. So they did already reduce that. And I think that you know, is a significant marker of their commitment to making this project work.
Thank you.
So I have a question for the planner. The applicant mentioned that in other communities, their ordinances only count a 1-bedroom as 1.1 rooms. Is that true?
So communities do it differently. Rooms, you know, density per room is not a universal standard everywhere. Some communities, yeah, go by rooms literally as room is written, like a bedroom or an efficiency equaling one room. Other communities do it by units. Other communities do it by total livable space of the total number of units. So density in zoning is really measured a lot of different ways. The interesting aspect here is the fact that essentially the zoning ordinance in some way, shape, or form kind of de-incentivizes the one bedroom units. When a lot of communities want housing diversity in terms of like numbers of bedrooms in a unit. And in this case, it's essentially that standard by classifying one bedroom units as 2 rooms, you're kind of de-incentivizing that actual housing type. So it is kind of an odd standard, but it's what Clausen put on the books at the time, and it's something Clausen can do in terms of their density measurement.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I can just add one thing regarding the fences. I know one of the neighbors asked about how long that would be. So our zoning ordinance does say word for word, damaged or deteriorated fences, including fences with peeling paint, shall be repaired or removed within 30 days of damage or notice of nuisance from the building department. Granted, it seemed like they would want to do that before that 30-day requirement, but there's a 30-day maximum that they do have to address that. So I just want to make that clear for you.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay. So I just do want to remind you that we're short a member today. So an affirmative vote of it has to happen for 3.
Correct.
If the motion is made. So you can decide to postpone anytime before we take a vote.
Take a vote. Well, that's a it's a difficult question to put. Again, we've been through a few meetings already, so I think some of the preferences to try and move and decide. I guess I suppose if the motion were proposed that didn't have enough, it would correct me if I'm wrong, it would automatically be tabled to one more meeting. Like if they made a motion,
so if
they
motion
voted on
it kind of sits on the agenda for next meeting.
For next
to my
meeting.
knowledge.
Yeah. So I
do 2-2 on approval and denial. It would go to next meeting.
And the other thing I want to mention is that since there's 2 variances, the motions will be separate for both of them as well.
Okay.
I think the requests are reasonable. I think that we would we trust this body, and again, if you're only one member short, I've been in situations where it's like a 7 or 9 member and they're down to 4 or 5, and that's when you're missing more than one person, I think that it's a little bit more prudent to do so. In this scenario, I think that I would defer to this board if they felt that if you felt that you had sufficient consensus, you felt you can make a decision tonight, we'd appreciate that. If and if it worked out that it was split and we are postponed, then that achieves the same result essentially.
Okay.
We would humbly request the motion to approve, but you don't always get what you ask for.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any discussion? I'll entertain a motion. And as Nick said, we need to separate those into two separate motions.
All right, Madam Chair, I would like to propose a motion to approve the variance for 436 through 456 West 14 Mile for the requirements from section 4.3.A.3 to permit a 20-foot side east setback, a reduction from the minimum 27.9-foot required setback. Based on the review criteria for variances per section 34.7.1.5 D of the zoning ordinance. The non-use dimensional variance may be allowed by the zoning board of appeals only in cases involving practical difficulties when the evidence of the official record of appeal supports all of the findings. 1, the practical difficulties are exceptional and peculiar to the property the person is requesting the variance and the results from the conditions which do not generally exist throughout the city. 2, the practical difficulties which will result from a failure to grant the variance include substantially more than a mere inconvenience or inability to attain a higher financial return. 3, allowing the non-use dimensional variance will result in the substantial justice being done, considering all the public benefits intended to be secured by this article and the individual hardships that will be suffered by a failure of the board not to grant the variance and the rights of others whose property would be affected by the allowance of the variance. 4th, the variance did not arise from the actions of the applicant or the previous landowner. 5th, the requested variance is not based solely on financial or need circumstances. Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
No.
Okay. We have a motion on the first item. Do I have a second?
And again, that's the request for the variance for the requirements to permit this 20-foot east setback.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Nick, could you take the roll, please?
Ms. Diane Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Ms. Perkins,
No.
Ms. Cindy Smith.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion of approval for the variance from the requirements from section 4.3B6 to permit a multifamily apartment building with a density of 25 total rooms, exceeding the 24-room maximum density requirement. Listing review criteria for the variances already listed for the previous variance on the 20-yard setback. And anything else you'd like to add?
Okay, I don't have anything to add. Okay. I have a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second again.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Nick, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Carpenter,
No.
Ms. Perkins,
No.
Ms. Cindy Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Diane Smith.
Yes. Okay. Motion fails.
Are there any other motions to propose?
That was a motion to approve. The two other options would be to deny or effectively be postpone it to the next meeting.
And you could choose to postpone with a finding that you want to see in the next. Or any kind of rationale for. That you need to have further information on, if you feel like that's
Okay.
an option.
Well, I guess I have a personal opinion that I agree that we have a shortage of apartments in Clawson. Rents are really high and we do have a shortage. And so, I appreciate your comment about that. I think it's important for us to look at density. That's just my personal opinion. Perhaps they could bring some census data, rent information to show the need for density in Clawson. That would be my recommendation. Is there anything else the board would like to?
That makes sense to me as well. That is my concern, is that this is not the first project that has been asked for higher density. And we grant it over and over and over and over again. Eventually, everything is just going to be bigger. And that's disturbing to me. So Also, I have one personal thing to say. I wonder what you mean by high caliber person will be in this apartment too. I find that to be kind of disturbing language.
Noted. It's not financially creditworthy. My apologies if I offended you.
Okay, so would we need a motion to postpone or?
Without a
that would-
motion, don't we automatically get set aside or do?
Yeah, it would just be on the next agenda, but I think just for, again,
Clarity.
clarity's sake, just to make sure there's no issue that if a motion to postpone it to the next meeting like we did. The second variance that was reviewed tonight, that'd be.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to postpone the second variance from the requirements of the section 4.3B6 to permit the multifamily apartment building with a density of 25 total rooms, exceeding the 24 room maximum density requirement to the next available ZBA meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to postpone the second variance request. Any discussion? Okay, Nick, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Perkins,
Yes.
Ms. Cindy Smith,
Yes.
Ms. Diane Smith,
Yes.
and Mr. Carpenter.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried.
Thank you for your time, board. We'll see you next month.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public discussion. Items not on the agenda. Is there anybody wishing to speak to that today?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, seeing no discussion, any other business? Nick or Adam, any other?
I'm sorry, was that for a staff report?
Other business,
Was
any other?
distracted for a
Okay,
second.
any other business to discuss today?
I can discuss it now or during staff report, whatever.
Okay, okay.
So I'll just discuss it now. If we have questions, we'll kind of just pull these two together. So it's been a couple months since the last time the ZBA's met, and so over the last few months, the planning commission has begun their review of the master plan, which the city council approved earlier this year. And as part of that master plan review, we've got a survey currently open that went live on September 6th. And we're just trying to get community feedback. And so we've got that survey available online, and we also have hard copies available at each municipal building for people to take if that's the way that they prefer to take the survey. On that same note, related to the master plan, we are looking at having some joint workshops between the ZBA, Planning Commission, DDA, and City Council. Those dates are, I'll say them twice so you guys can write them down. October 10th, which is a Tuesday before the Planning Commission at 6 p.m. And then Wednesday, October 11th at 7:30 p.m. 7 or 7:30, it's still kind of undecided.
Either or both?
So, yeah, and so the intent with the workshop is to have the same content to discuss at both events, but that way if people have conflicting schedules, they can choose to attend one or the other. And so that was kind of the goal of doing that. And so we're scheduling two right now, and depending on how the turnout is, we may be looking at having some other workshop. I mean, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for public feedback and engagement between all the boards and commissions, but we'll be looking at seeing how those two go and then see what else is necessary as that conversation materializes, and the content described is just kind of the main goals of the master plan and what the process is going to look like over the next 12-ish months.
What was
So-
that second date?
Wednesday, October 11th at 7:30.
Oh, so 10:10 and 10:11.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then are there any questions on that? I have one more item, but I'll put that on the staff report just for continuity.
Okay, no questions?
Okay.
No, no questions.
Awesome. So good to keep going. All right, so the city is currently going to be undergoing a migration from Google Workspace as our email host to Microsoft Outlook. That is going to take place next Monday at 6 p.m. Users are going to lose access to their Google Gmail. And then at 6 a.m. that following Tuesday, so the 26th, you'll be able to log back in with onto Microsoft Outlook instead of Gmail. And so I'll send an email out to everyone just so everyone's aware of it. And so sometime the 25th, you'll receive an email with a temporary password from our IT provider VC3. And so that is not a phishing scam. That is a true temporary password that you'll want to use on the 26th to log into Microsoft Outlook. And so you'll just want to log in with your same current email that you have, your @City of Clawson one, under Microsoft Outlook with the temporary password that they provided to you. And then at that point, you'll be able to create your own password and log in as you will. So we're essentially just moving from Google Gmail to Microsoft Outlook for a number of reasons. But just want to give you guys a heads up. And like I said, I'll probably send out an email to everyone just so everyone's aware of what that process will look like.
Okay.
Thank you.
But you said the email address will be the same.
Yep, so it'll still be
Okay.
the current email address. It's just logging in the first time you want to use that temporary password that they provide you. And if anyone has any issues logging into it, please just reach out to me and I'd be happy to help you guys get access to that.
Okay.
And then and just a general staff report that was provided in the packet. I'm trying to do some, I don't know, I don't want to say comprehensive report. I mean, there was just one little line about each variance that was approved over the last couple months. But if anyone has any questions on those variances that have been approved, I'd be happy to answer them. And any questions in general as well.
No questions, but I appreciate you doing that, Nick.
Of course, there's a couple of things we're working on to try and make, development variances more transparent to the public on our website. And as much as I wish we could start these things yesterday, it's a bit harder than I originally intended, but just trying to do these small steps to increase the knowledge in the community is something that, we're really trying to do here.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Any other business?
One quick thing, I know last time I said that there was a ZBA training through the Michigan State Citizen Planner. I know Miss City Smith said that she's interested and I didn't really hear back from anyone else. Would anyone be opposed if I just? Okay, you did as well. I just want to, when I put people in together, we sometimes get bulk pricing. So I would like to just have everyone registered for it, just that way I think, the training would help. As the process comes up to you guys. And so I will probably be doing that soon. So if there's any objection that someone, no training for me, I will not include you, but probably the next week or two, I'll probably register everyone. And in that email that I send out about my email migration, I'll include some background on that ZBA training for you guys and to give you the opportunity to, say yay or nay.
Okay, sounds good. And that's a virtual training, right?
Yes, virtual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Learn at your own pace too.
And that is my final thing, nothing else. I'll stop blabbering unless you guys have any questions.
I do have a question. How long is the survey for the master plan open?
So we don't currently have an end date in mind, and that's because we kind of want to make sure we can get, some pretty diverse and quality feedback from the public. And so it's been open for a little over 2 weeks now. And due to some technical difficulties, we just had the ability to have some hard copies available at all of our municipal buildings. And we've got a larger senior population that we want to get their feedback on because they're an important part of the community.
Okay.
And so we've got those available at library, the community center here at City Hall and the DPW. And so we're probably looking middle to late October, but it's kind of dependent. And once we have a time frame in our marketing campaign, we'll kind of share, closing in 14 days, 7 days, and so on. But it'll be open for at least another couple of weeks.
Okay, but there's a link on the website.
Link on the website, social media, yeah. And then the Planning Commission and myself will be at the Clawson Chamber of Commerce Cause and Pause events with some QR codes and some hard copy surveys to try and meet people where they are and get some more feedback. So.
Okay. All right.
And that I'll do a little plug. It's this Saturday at the City Park from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Bring
you.
your pet, there's a photo opportunity.
Photo op. Okay.
So pet portrait person.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Well, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Okay. All right. I have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
I hope you feel better.
Well, thank you.
Definitely.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you all for enduring a little bit of neighborly ire about that Rochester, the current, what I know now are the current owners and not these other guys.
Don't know what you don't know until
You know it.
know it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, we
appreciate you showing up.
Well, thank you for all you do.
For sure. Absolutely.
And if you guys have any other questions, I'm extremely happy to talk with you guys. So.
And yet,
I'm sorry.
Chair Smith, good
Susan,
comments
nice meeting
on
you.
housing.
I don't know if you got it. Okay, you did.
Analyzing our master
Call,
plan.
email, text, whatever's needed
Is,
for you
you
guys.
know,
I'd love to chat
how do we
about it.
make
So
sure that
I've heard
everyone-
everyone. My time.
Thank you.
That